Hello everybody, welcome to the Eternal Patch Breakdown. My name is Pojo, and it's about a month into Fall of Argenport, so for those of you who have seen a couple of Eternal sets now, you know what that means. It's time for a month after patch to change over a couple of cards, balance out the draft format a little bit, and fix anything that's looking a little bit degenerate, also maybe uptune some things that are not looking very good. So we're going to see a couple of new cards entering the meta, and we're going to see a couple of cards leaving it, and I happen to actually have the card change screen up for once, so we're going to try and do it from this screen since it so helpfully highlights all of the things that have changed. So let's go down the list in order. I've already done card breakdowns for Fire and Justice, but we'll probably add some addendums to those before they actually go up on YouTube. And we're going to talk about what changed and what's different and how that affects the draft and ranked environment. First things first, Jawbone Greatsword, a card that I've already crafted two of in favor of Wyatt decks, because I've actually really been liking this card in Wyatt decks. Jawbone Greatsword is a 5/2 with a tribute, and the thing that has changed about it is that the Brand Without Fear token that it creates off of the tribute now costs 6 instead of 7. That means that Brand is a lot more tempo efficient. Like a 7 cost 8/6 that has Berserk is kind of good. Like, it seems like it's kind of good, but for the most part, like, without Overwhelm, that card is actually pretty understated for ranked. Now it is actually like really aggressive for a 6-drop, and the summon ability that gives it Overwhelm makes it very scary for a 6-drop. So I would say that this definitely improves the strength of Brand a lot as a playable card, which is pretty important because Jawbone Greatsword, as a card that I was evaluating, I was saying that it was actually really good if you don't care about the tribute at all. Like, basically, the tribute for this card is, you know, it's an extra card. It's very solid. The card can do things and it can win the game, and it is an extra card, which is always really useful. But in general, I always recommend to people that they play Jawbone Greatsword without caring too much about the tribute, because if you get really aggressive with this card, you can basically just completely blow people out in aggro. And because Brand used to cost 7, Jawbone Greatsword didn't really, like, do anything for the slower decks, or do anything for the aggro decks, because basically that 7 cost was not a card that you could play, so you just really liked having a bigger, better Magma Javelin. Yeah, so I really like this change a lot. I think that Brand Without Fear is now actually a lot more playable, but I also think that Jawbone Greatsword was already a good card, so this should, like, really sort of add that usability to the card and make it a lot more interesting in long-term games and allow aggro decks to actually go a little longer, because some aggro decks are just never going to get to 7. Like, it's just not going to happen. So yeah, this is really interesting. This could make this card actually very powerful, so we'll keep an eye on it, but I would say overall it's a perfectly fine change that's actually going to make both sides of the Jawbone Greatsword interesting, as opposed to just one side of the Jawbone Greatsword. Herald of the Parliament has gone down from a 2/2 to a 1/1, but it now has +2/+2 while the enemy player has no units, as opposed to +1/+1. So the basic effect is that it is now more important to have your opponent have no units to actually get Herald of the Parliament's ability. Okay, so I'm thinking about this card a little bit. Like, Justice cards are apparently pretty strong in draft meta. I've talked about Herald of the Parliament some, and as a card, I'm pretty in favor of it, or I was pretty in favor of it. The nerf here looks pretty strong, but the card is still really reasonable in draft just because that ultimate ability is insanely good. However, I think that this card is doing a weird thing with design now, and this is actually something that was listed in the patch notes as far as justification goes. They're trying to sort of nerf these cards while focusing a little harder on their quests, which is to say the prerequisites that the card has to have to be good. And Herald of the Parliament has a really weird quest. It's actually kind of an unusual quest with a little bit of dissonance to it, because what it essentially says is that this is a flying unit that gets a bonus when your opponent doesn't have any units to block it anyways. So it's either got unblockability from, like, most types of units and is a 1/1, or your opponent has no units and it's a 3/3, which is, like, a little bit weird overall. Like, this card does not, like, really benefit all that much from being, like, a card on board. Like, as a 1/1 flyer for 3, it's actually pretty terrible beyond, like, being a kind of spark trigger and a pretty good unit to, like, put weapons on. So, like, this quest is really weird in draft, and I don't know that I really like the emphasis on that quest, but overall, like, that's fine. The card is still very strong. Like, the pay for ability is still very good. I also kind of don't like the fact that the card used to be a 2-cost that turned into a 3-cost that also had a 4-cost owl, or a 2/2 owl, 3/3 owl, and 4/4 owl, respectively. You lose a little bit of just interesting design from that perspective, and now Herald of the Parliament is just kind of a weird card. It's still an okay card, still got card advantage associated with it, so I think you definitely still play this in draft, and I think it's actually still a pretty strong pick, but it's interesting to note that, like, yeah, I don't know if this is a nerf that I really am particularly behind, even if Justice is fairly strong right now. Sheriff's Hat, 3/1 for 4, Spellcraft 2, play Detain. So, I was really hoping to play with this one for a little longer. We walked to Master in the first week on the back of Sheriff's Hat. I strongly approve of this card. It was like the strongest uncommon draft card in the set, like by a pretty fair margin. There may be a couple other competitors, but this one was just bonkers, like absolutely insane card. I really liked this card. Spiked Buckler stats with like a little bit of an extra bonus plus a Spellcraft kicker. Oh, that's really solid. That's really good stuff. This nerf I don't like at all. I mean, I think that Sheriff's Hat probably deserved a nerf, but like it's a little bit strange where they're choosing to hit it, because they're hitting the health stats on it on a Justice card, which is a little bit strange in and of itself, because that makes the card really a lot more aggressive and look a lot more like a red card. Like, this card is still green because it plays Detain, but also, like, it's Detain, which is just not a meaningful card to be playing at slow spell speed most of the time. I actually forgot that the Spellcraft on this was 2. I thought it was a 4-cost with Spellcraft 1 play Detain, which, oh man, that makes this even worse. So, like, yeah, this card is a pretty bad weapon now. It doesn't give you enough health to keep the unit alive. The damage is mostly irrelevant except on flyers, and now it's got a Spellcraft ability that cares about neutralizing blockers, which, again, like, with a card this low on health, you really don't want to play it on things that don't have evasive abilities, especially since it costs so much in tempo and, like, overall setting. I think this card was nerfed from being, like, one of the best uncommons to a really bad pick overall. But maybe testing will prove otherwise. Again, they're saying that they want to focus on the quest a little bit. They want to, like, make it more likely that you're going to play this for the Detain, but, like, I don't really see a 3/1 weapon plus a Detain being a good use of 6 power. Like, it's an okay thing to sink into if, like, you don't have anything else, but yeah, this card is really worrisome now. Like, Ruination Sledge, the 2/1 weapon with Ruin as a Spellcraft kicker for 1, is not that good a card in practice. Like, we've generally found that this card is pretty miserable. Actually, I think Ruination Sledge might be a 3/1. So it might actually just be a 2-cost 3/1. Yeah, so this card is, like, really poorly and inefficiently statted now. The thing that it would have been good at, which is defense, is not really very well set up. And the Detain ability, which is sort of its good offense route, is like, I just don't see it being very good. I can see there being some situations where you play Sheriff's Hat on a flyer, and then you also detain something on the ground, or you detain one of their flyers, and you feel pretty good about your attack because you get to push a bunch of damage with Sheriff's Hat. But, like, now that is, like, so many conditionals stacked on top of each other, plus the fact that your opponent can remove whatever unit you play with, like, a torch or the 2-cost Grenadin one is probably the most common one that's just going to absolutely wreck you. Like, I think this card is very bad now, and I think it may have been over-nerfed as far as things go. I also just, again, I don't like the like, design of the card now. Like, Sheriff's Hat was a balanced card before. As a 2/2, I would have liked it just fine, but as a 3/1, it just feels wrong for a hat. Like, yeah, so I'm actually really down on 2 nerfs from this patch. Neither of these are cards that I'm particularly interested in now, and they are cards that I kind of liked the design of before. So I think that, yeah, like, overall, power level wise, they probably needed a nerf. I'm okay with them on that front, but the nerfs seem to be really ill-targeted this time, and I'm a little bit concerned overall about what they do to the sort of flavor of the cards. So, in any case. We do have some other cards. Levitate has gone up to 2. I am okay with this. I'm a little sad because Levitate was a card that I did use pretty frequently. I like this card a lot for popping Aegises and doing other like interesting shenanigans. Levitate getting the Inspire treatment feels really weird, especially since Primal was for a very long time in a pretty poor spot. But right now Primal's doing just fine. Like there's a lot of good cards that really benefit from having Levitate and other things like that. Primal actually has good units now, and it has the Berserk ability, which makes Levitate a lot better. So this getting a sort of rapid shot treatment, or like basically just getting a little bit of an increase to make sure that it doesn't do degenerate stuff, is fine. Basically, this is making sure that TJP decks, the Blitz decks that are using Berserk, and basically any other Berserker decks aren't just easily flying across over your head and sort of really like just bonking you on the head. This is also a pretty strong nerf to Haunting Scream style decks and Infiltrate decks. And, you know, all of those things were a little bit degenerate, so having them have to spend a little bit more to do a thing that is otherwise free is fine. Like, I would say that this is a pretty good nerf overall, and Levitate would have continued to be more and more degenerate as time went on, but it's still a little bit sad to see a nice blue card getting nerfed. All the same, I think that this is a pretty good nerf overall. Shadow Stalker. Okay, so draft-wise, 3/3/3, very good. Shadow Stalker was a 4-cost 3/3, and it was kind of underwhelming at that point. Has unblockable at night, but also has Tribute Nightfall. Now, this is a 3/3 with a relevant ability, a very relevant ability, and a really interesting tribute. I forgot that this card doesn't trigger Nightfall when it is played, which does make it slightly worse. But overall, like, I think this card is actually a really powerful draft pick now. Like, you should probably be looking at this card as an option, and you can play some really unusual archetypes now. I think I've talked a little bit in streams about how like Harbinger's Bite might be a draft choice if you are going for a particularly high synergy deck. This is that high synergy deck. Lithrai Darkstalkers, Shadow Stalkers, and like weird cards like Harbinger's Bite, which are otherwise extremely bad, never pick them. Like, you can actually do a Nightfall deck with Shadow Stalkers that will utterly destroy your opponents and could sweep for 7-0s. Like, I think that picking like 3 of this card could be really, really good for you. Yeah, overall, I think this card is actually really powerful now, and a 3/3 for 3 is never all that bad. The influence cost is a little bit deep on it, but yeah, beyond that, I think this is a pretty decent draft card. Would it see ranked play? Probably not, but maybe a Nightfall deck would want it. A 3/3 unblockable sure is a decent amount of stats for an unblockable unit, and it's the best unblockable unit that we have at the moment, I think. So Bartholo is a little bit underwhelming. The 2/2 for 2 is a little bit underwhelming. Void Drummer is a little bit underwhelming as well. Like, basically everything just doesn't have the stats to really leverage that evasion. Shadow Stalker actually does have the stats to leverage that evasion, and can benefit from a bunch of other effects. Probably not a very strong ranked card, but a really interesting draft card and one to watch out for. Aegon's Choice. Kill an attachment or an enemy, or create and draw a +4/+4 mithril armor, has been changed from a slow spell to a fast spell. Oh, this is actually a really good change. Like, just in terms of design and usability, this is similar to the brand change, where it just makes the card so much more fun to play. I actually think that Aegon's Choice is a really interesting pick in draft in general, but this now allows you to sort of spend your excess power in situations where you can actually do, like, good things. And it also means that you can use it to kill relic weapons and other things, which is just nice to have. A choice that kills relic weapons at a fast spell speed is probably something that you're going to want to run in ranked. So if you're playing Rakano decks, you might actually feel really good about Aegon's Choice. I think you could actually, like, potentially run this card in as a replacement for Deep Forge Plate and get a more flexible, more aggressive deck that also does better against relic weapon based strategies like Armory. So, like, ranked and draft wise, this card is much improved, and I actually think it's a really, really powerful draft pick now, because I thought it was a pretty powerful draft card before, but it was so slow. Now it's not that slow. You get to play it basically at any turn where you just have some extra power, and then you have a +4/+4 mithril armor to, like, completely mash people with. The attachment is also just, the attachment destruction is just way more relevant now, and that's actually going to be really useful in draft scenarios, so yeah, pretty down with that. Accelerated Evo went up to 3. Alright, card was strong. I don't have too much to say about this one. I think it's very similar to the Levitate nerf, or the Levitate nerf in general, because you are adding a little bit of extra difficulty to evasive strategies that are pretty rough overall. Accelerated Evolution is still a really good card advantage card. It's still the card that you use to free your big units from permafrosts while also using it to get your big units across for huge amounts of damage. I don't think this really affects its ability in, say, Time Primal midrange at all, but it does affect the TJP Blitz deck, and it affects it in a pretty serious way. So we'll see if TJP Blitz survives these two nerfs. I think it should be fine. Probably it'll go into straight Combre, or it'll start running more interesting cards. There'll be some more like variance and variation, and the win rate will drop from, you know, whatever it is right now, which assumably is not too high, but is probably lingering close to like 60%. I don't know. In any case, like, yeah, this card, the Blitz deck was clearly a little bit strong, so that nerf definitely hurts it. I like this card a lot, so I'm sad to see it nerfed, but I certainly don't think it's bad still, and like, yeah, it's definitely a card that you're still going to want to play, because it's good with Dawnwalkers and Cersos and Sandstorm Titans and all sorts of other things. Not usually Sandstorm Titan, but, you know, like all of the big, ridiculous Elysian units that you want to play, you're still going to be relatively happy to have Accelerated Evolutions. Now, instead of it being a 4 of, you might have it be a 2 of or a 1 of, and you'll feel pretty good about that. So overall, very healthy meta changes, and so as far as like targeting for the like actual balance sweep, that's good stuff. I do hope that they change some of these cards back, or like take a look at like redesigning these a little bit more, because at the moment I don't think that Sheriff's Hat or Herald of the Parliament are particularly winners as cards anymore. But I think that overall, like, the balance changes are really well targeted. Like, this looks actually really interesting. I'm curious what the numbers are, as always. It's nice to see more numbers, but not seeing the numbers, you can still get the impression that they're doing the right things with their changes and setting them up in the right way. So, yeah, feel free to leave comments in the video below about how, like, the Levitate changes or whatever else you want to talk about. I am sure that there are going to be some people with TJP Blitz decks who are not super happy about Levitate Accelerated Evolution. Me, I'm less happy about these two, but overall I think that they're pretty positive changes, and that's my take on it. So thanks for watching, you guys, and I will see you soon. We'll be back streaming Friday, and I've got just a ton of stuff to actually edit that will then come up on YouTube, hopefully in a big old like clump, because at the moment, like, I've just not had time for editing, and that's why there haven't been so many videos as of late. We got plenty of content though from Fall of Argenport, so I'm pretty excited to show some more stuff off. More Wyatt Brew highlights will be coming up. I think I have another deck or two that we're going to do some brews on. Eternal Basics are definitely going to be basically all of August. We're going to be working all the way through like 4 through 10, and then beyond that, like, we might have some other new fun stuff. Gonna be pretty exciting. You can subscribe and do notifications and all that stuff if you want to see that, or follow Twitter, social medias. Yeah, I'm super happy to be playing Fall of Argenport right now. I've really been enjoying playing with all of the different decks and all of the fun promos, and I'm excited to get back into it. So see you guys soon. Cheers.